message, board. I recently came across this display on eBay. Some guy had 6 of them available. I presume some passenger information display on a train station or something had been recently decommissioned, and so this guy ended up with 6 fairly big LED displays that he was selling for £15 each. So I bought 2 of them, see if I could figure out how to use them. So each board has 7 rows of 40 LEDs on it, so 280 LEDs per board in total. It's fairly obvious how they work once you have a quick look at them. So there's quite a few shift register chips on the bottom here. That's the 74164. That's a serial in parallel out 8-bit shift register. Next to each one there is an MC1413P, which is just a driver chip. So they drive the columns. And then on the other end here there is small 74 series logic, 74136P. That's a 3 to 8 line decoder which does the rows. So you enable one row at a time, shift the data in, enable that row, and then move on to the next one. Keep going until you've scanned the entire display. On the input here there is a 7400 chip, which is a NAND chip. For some reason the clock and data signals just go straight through there. They are inverted and then inverted again, which may seem pointless, but there we go. So each board's got a fairly chunky data connector on it. It's a 10-pin connector, and then there's a power connector which delivers a separate power supply for driving the LEDs. So I'll show you on this one. There's power connections just soldered directly onto the back of the board, and you should be able to see there 7.5 volts for the LED driver current, and then down the bottom here there's the logic chip power supply, which is 5 volts. So I've set up my power supply to do 7.5 volts and up to 10 amps. I've got a 5 volt line here, that's 7.5, 7.5. Interestingly, on the board there isn't actually a physical connection anywhere between the ground for the 7.5 volts and the ground for the 5 volts down the bottom there. So that's why I've got this little extra cable joining the two together. These boards are designed for daisy chaining, so you can connect one board to another board to effectively make a shift register twice the length and get a bigger sign. So after a little bit of poking around, I've managed to trace back the traces on the back of the board to the connector, and we can see all we need is 5 volts and ground for all the digital logic. There's a clock input here and a data input for the shift registers, and then there's 3 row selection pins. They go straight into the 3 to 8 line decoder there to select a row, and then there's an enable pin which also goes into here, which enables or disables the entire row. So that should allow you to scan through all the rows, shifting in the data that you want each time to display an image. So just to prove that I did know how it works, on here I've got a button connected to the data line, and everything else pretty much just wired up to either ground or 5 volts. I've set it up for row 2 at the moment, and I've got a function generator up here, which is just generating a 100 Hz clock pulse at the moment, which is fairly slow, but it does allow you to see if the thing is working. So hopefully when I press this, we see some LEDs light up. I'll get an Arduino connected up to these connections here, see if I can make it do something a little bit more interesting. So, attempt 1 was a failure. This is supposed to be just a test pattern. There's a sort of V shape, but as you can see, that hasn't happened. Okay, here we go. Wasn't too big a problem, just a couple of bugs in the code that I've written. So there's the Arduino, now replacing all the wires on the breadboard, and it's making a nice pattern. So there's some text. Turns out it's actually quite difficult to draw a smiley face when you've only got 7 pixels. Looks fairly steady, even on the camera, there's no flickering. Does look a little bit better with a piece of paper I've written, just to diffuse it slightly. Seems to be working well. So this was my first attempt at scrolling text. It goes a bit fast, and there seems to be lots of unwanted stuff at the end. Not sure what's going on there. I'll film it in slow motion, see if that helps. That's better. I've fixed some bugs and tweaked some timing. Now text scrolling is working beautifully. It would be wrong of me not to make a snake implementation for this display, so I have done.